And welcome to our next session with Justly 2021 here in New Orleans, Louisiana, on the campus of the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. We are so excited to have joined us for this next phase, this next session, this next opportunity to learn and grow as we are sharpening our skills and preparing preachers to preach. We have some exciting information for you coming in this next section. Brought to us by our very own dear brother, friend of our conference, Dr. Jonathan Butler, all the way from San Francisco, California. He's coming to us live today, so we're very excited and grateful for this opportunity to be together. Jonathan serves as the Associate Minister for Christian Education at the historic Third Baptist Church, where the Reverend Dr. Amos Brown is the pastor. It is an exciting time for him. In California, as he has served there for a few years now, and he's continuing to do his research and work. He works for UCSF. He is doing amazing things in this area, and we are definitely grateful to have him to share with us about coalition and community building, one of those practical things that we as preachers must begin to do as we go beyond the pews to the community that we're called to serve. So after this important message, you will be able to receive directly from Dr. Jonathan Butler. Let's give him a hand as we receive him right after this message.
Greetings, beloved. Am I okay to start? I pray that I am. So greetings to you all. I am certainly grateful for this opportunity to share with you and privileged to have been able to share some of what I think is a very important aspect of ministry. And I'm grateful for Dr. Thompson for the invitation to be able to share with you. He knows so many. And as a consequence of that, I know that I'm lucky to be a part of the number. I see others that are joining. And so I'm grateful for that because I want this opportunity to be not only me talking, but a conversation about what Dr. Thompson has described, going beyond the aisles of the church, but going beyond the walls of the church. And so I want to share with you some of the experiences that I've had in a pandemic, and hopefully we can glean something to help us even after the pandemic. So I'm going to take you through a presentation, and hopefully I can share my screen about some of the work that I've been doing here in San Francisco. And just to give you a little bit of context about San Francisco. Now, African Americans comprise of about 5% of the population in San Francisco. San Francisco is one of the wealthiest cities in the world. Actually, it's more billionaires per capita than any place in this world. In spite of all of that, the average income for a Black family in San Francisco is about $40,000 versus the average income, yearly income, annual income for a white individual is about $100,000. So there's an extremely huge economic gap between us and white folks here in San Francisco. In addition to that, many Blacks live in impoverished neighborhoods where there's so many environmental concerns. We have the lowest unemployment in the city. And in terms of our young people, have the largest education gap of Black students in in San Francisco, and I will talk to you a little bit about that. And so I paint that picture just for the for the audience here, just to let you know the importance of doing work outside of the walls of the church. Now, it's one thing to shout hallelujah on Sunday, but it's another thing Monday through Saturday to actually what Pastor Freddie Haynes describes as a doulaluya moment. And so there's opportunity for us to do the work of ministry outside of our Sunday church setting. And obviously that's important. And the preaching moment is even important. But I would also argue that as important as the preaching moment is actually the implementation of what we say on Sunday, Monday through Saturday. And so I want to share with you some of the work that we've been doing to try to preach, actually practice what we preach on a daily basis. With that being said, let me share my screen here. I have a presentation to describe sort of what I've been doing as during the pandemic in terms of coalition building, and hopefully that will lead you to ask some of your questions that you may have, and also just to have a rich discussion about what it takes to do ministry outside of the walls of the church. A lot of times when we go to seminary, we oftentimes we learn the aspects of the Bible, we learn about theology, we learn about preaching and church administration. But when you are actually in the trenches and doing ministry, many of you may realize that it takes a lot more than that you may spend more time actually trying to write a grant or speaking with a philanthropist, and those things things such as those things you spend more time in ministry doing, because at the end of the day, we're trying to impact the communities that we serve in this society that we live. So I'm going to share my screen just to share with some of you regarding, let's see if this works. And as I'm trying to figure this out, I just wanted to, first of all, just let you know that along with my being associated with Third Baptist Church of San Francisco, which is a historic church, is the oldest church west of the Mississippi, founded in 1852. And the pastor there's my leader, Pastor Amos C. Brown, who is one of 8 students that was taught by MOK. And I am privileged to be able to share in ministry with his and his leadership, with him and his leadership. And then I also serve as a research faculty at the University of California, San Francisco, where I do mostly work around the relationship between religion and our physical and mental health. And in addition to that, I am going to speak on my involvement with what is called the San Francisco African American Faith-Based Coalition. I think I'm able to share now. I'm wondering if my screen is everyone see my screen or no? Okay, I'm asked to send the PowerPoint. Well, let's not do a PowerPoint. I can speak a little clearly, and I'll have some time for answers to some of the questions that you may have. Like I said, I am the executive director for the San Francisco African American Faith-Based Coalition. It is a coalition of 21 churches in San Francisco that are mostly found in the areas where African Americans live, the Bayview neighborhood in the city. And the main mission of the coalition is to mobilize San Francisco and its resources to eliminate health disparities and inequities in the Black African American community. And so it was founded prior to the pandemic in 2016, where this woman, actually, her name is Veronica Shepard, and she corralled the pastors together to let them know that the city has a plethora of resources that they're not tapping into for their congregations. And so what she did was corral them and ask them, what is the most important need in the community? And many of the pastors explained to her that their parishioners were hungry. And that was the start of this coalition of 21 churches. And from there, they did an assessment of their churches to really get a sense of what was the need. And even one pastor explained that after the assessment, he realized that I've been ministering to my parishioners every Sunday, not realizing that they were hungry. And I think that that is certainly something that is awfully troubling, but there are some things that you could do to address that. So that's what we've done. So in terms of food security and the coalition of churches, which meets the needs of about 1,600 households and about 2,200 individuals, when you ask them what their need is, or what their worries are as it pertains to food security, many of them are worried that food will run out before they have money to buy more. As a matter of fact, more than half. Many of them can't afford to eat a balanced meal. And then many of them also cut the size of their meals to skip. And so the coalition is comprised of individuals that have high rates of diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, asthma, kidney failure. And it is oftentimes the case in any of our communities, even where you are. During COVID, many of the people that we served were African American, but we also extended our reach and service to our Latinx population here, some of our Asian population, particularly our Samoan group. And so just to get you, just to paint a picture or tell you a story about how we sort of came to do this work of providing food to communities during the pandemic. So as I was explaining to you, prior to the pandemic, we had already been providing food to our parishioners. So every Saturday, we would provide fresh produce in partnership with the San Francisco Marine Food Bank. And from there, as the pandemic started, we continued to do the work. And so every Saturday, we would provide these produce boxes. The churches would pick them up at the produce site and then distribute them to the homes of the individuals, because many of the folks that we serve are seniors, and they were sheltered in. We created this delivery model, which enabled them to receive their produce from the delivery services. And so as we began to do that and partnering with our local food bank, one particular Saturday, we received word that there was a donation that was going to be given to a organization to provide prepared meals to particularly our faith-based communities. And so there was this, the CEO of Twitch, this tech company, this gaming company, gave $1 million to one of our partners called San Francisco New Deal. And San Francisco New Deal's purpose was to provide meals, or to provide resources rather, to minority restaurants, so that they could cook meals for the communities in which they typically serve. So many Black-owned restaurants received funds during the pandemic to cook meals to our community. And so when they did call us, SF New Deal, they said that we can provide as many meals as you need. And so many of our churches were delivering meals every single day, Monday through Sunday, depending on the congregational size. As many as 350 meals, or as many as even 400 to 500 meals per day were provided until the money ran out. And as we began to, do this work, and community was being fed, basically, because obviously people had lost their jobs, they couldn't afford food, they were trying to provide for a household, their children were not in school. And so obviously, as many of you know, that, their conditions in which they face, they needed some support. And so we provided these meals. And fast forwarding all the way from last year of March up until to the today, we have provided up to 350,000 prepared meals to our parishioners, not only that are a part of our church, but as you know, the Black church extends its reach outside to reach those that aren't necessarily attending our church on Sunday, but our communities that surround our physical churches. So we were able to provide these meals up until today to over 2,200 churches. And so as we began to provide meals to individuals and build relationships and do ministry with community members that are outside of our congregation, we began to attract many people that not necessarily, went to church on Sunday, but was very grateful for the church and how it had led the way in providing meals to them. And so fast forward to March of this year, as the vaccinations began to roll out, as a consequence of us building relationships with the community, we began to provide vaccination clinics. And each church, we provided a schedule for each church to host vaccination clinics, educate our people on the importance of vaccination. And although there was this slow process for African Americans in San Francisco, but because of the relationships that we had built with them by providing them food, it enabled us to be able to vaccinate up to this date 1,000 individuals, along with other organizations at our churches. And to date, San Francisco has the best numbers in terms of those that are vaccinated. 80% of African Americans in the city are vaccinated. We're almost nearing 90% for the entire city. And as a consequence of the coalition of churches coming together, these 21 churches coming together, working together, and continuing in the work together, we're able to do this sort of work. Now, the structure of the organization has changed as a consequence of the money that we have been able to obtain. So as I explained to you, we started off with $1 million to support us. But because of the marketing strategy that we implemented and getting the word out of what we were doing and the impact that it had on the community, there were more donors and funders who would come and provide us with resources. And so as being in Silicon Valley, one of the benefits is that there is a plethora of billionaires there. And then during this pandemic, there was this call for those that had resources to, especially during the George Floyd era, to provide resources to Black organizations. So we began to get more money from foundations that came to us, that recognized us on social media. And to this day, we've been able to raise about $5 million from organizations, foundations, from governmental agencies, all because we were able to come together as a body of churches, as a coalition of churches. And the more you come together, the more power that you have. So that when it was time to vouch for the things that we were doing to our city leaders, it was that communal effort in terms of getting our story out there. And when it came to the work we were doing, people recognized the fact that these 21 churches, and it wasn't always easy. It's hard already to deal with one church. But when you have to deal with 21 churches, obviously there's some obstacles in place. But if everybody has the understanding of the mission of eliminating health disparities, utilizing San Francisco's resources to do that, then there's many doors and opportunities that can open up. And so what I want to talk to you about is obviously the power of collaboration, that these churches came together, but we also partnered with many other organizations that were in the city. And as a consequence of that, it was no problem for them to share with funders that they knew about what the work that we were doing. And that's the reason why we were able to raise the funds. And the other thing is we were just faithful for what we had. And because of the fact that we were faithful for what we had, God kept on providing for us, even to this date. And so, again, we have we have provided 350,000 meals to these congregations. To date, we have provided about 30,000 produce boxes. Every Saturday, we continue to deliver produce boxes, and we've been vaccinating, and will continue to vaccinate as those boosters roll out. But we had this crazy idea last year to feed 5,000 individuals, to work with community members in the city to feed 5,000. So last year, around December, we provided 5,000 turkeys and produce boxes to communities and partnered with organizations. As a consequence of that, we did that in a matter of 3 weeks, raised about $500,000 to do this work. And the reason why, again, is because of the value of collaboration, coming together not only as a church, a coalition of churches, but coming together as a community. And that sort of raises the eyebrows of those who have the funds. In addition to that, the work keeps going. The need is still there. The disparities still exist. People are still hungry. People are certainly in need. We were trying to get out of this pandemic. We were trying to help those who had who needed to get vaccinated. But we also knew that our kids were failing in school prior to the pandemic, and they were even getting, the achievement gap was getting larger as we were getting into the pandemic. So what I did was created a proposal, whereas, I talked with one of our funders who had supported our work and offered them this opportunity to enhance what the church, one of the churches, it happens to be the church that I'm a part of, Third Baptist, had already been doing. So we had a tutoring program where we would provide tutoring services to students after school. In addition to that, we had at our church a music academy. And so what we wanted to do is bring those two programs together, because we made the pitch that music, and especially math, would it help, those two together would help to sort of close that achievement gap. In addition to that, providing mental health services. And so in that simple pitch, and because of the work that we have been doing, one of our funders offered us an additional $1 million to do this work. They gave us $500,000 straight off, and then $250,000 for the next 2 years to do this work. So we are currently providing 50 students with after-school tutoring and piano lessons and services in terms of mental health for the family. I say all that to say is that there is certainly strength in collaboration. And I can't stress that enough, that when churches come together, instead of being in isolation. So we live in an individualistic society in which it is only, it's about me, myself, my church. But the reality is, what we learn in this pandemic is if you all come together in collaboration, there can be a lot of things that can happen. And that if you want to provide for the communities in which you serve, it's important for you, it's important for all of us to establish these faith coalitions. And we've sort of implemented this model, and we're trying to take it across the country, because we believe that when we all come together, there's many things and opportunities that can happen. So what I want to end with is, if I'm able to share this time, I really want to share this video. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Share. And this video captures I think I got it here. All right, can everyone see my screen? Let's try it again. This video captures everything that we have been able to do to date. Let's see. All right. So as we figure this out, I want to offer the opportunity for those that are here to ask any questions that they may have. Are there any questions? So we figured out how to do this. I have sharing privileges, and I am clicking share screen. Let me see if I can. Chrome has lost permission to capture share. Nevertheless, if there are any questions, I just want to reiterate the importance of not only establishing a coalition of churches, but establishing and maintaining relationships with other community organizations, particularly Black community organizations. We've established relationship with our local food bank, one of our organizations, SF New Deal, who's prepared the meals. We've established relationship with the volunteer organization called Together SF. We've established relationships with the Department of Public Health, with UCSF, and other entities that enable us to continue to do this work. And the good thing about these relationships that have been built and sustaining these relationships for progress, working together to find out ways how to get money. And one of the ways in which we've been successful is we've been able to get city funding and state funding and even national funding. And the good thing about that type of funding is that whenever there is an additional need, the city typically finds a way to continue to support what they've already given us. So, for example, we have obviously been doing this food work since March. We've run out of funds, and all you have to do sometimes is call a particular organization, a particular city agency, and ask for additional funds, and it's easier for them to funnel money through an already existing grant or funding mechanism that they've provided. So it's important for each of us to sustain our relationships. Now, as we move forward to the next year, there is a need to change the model in which we have. We delivered meals to our seniors, we delivered meals to our families and their offspring and their children. But now, as we move forward to the next year, and as we shift out of this pandemic, particularly in San Francisco, things have moved along even more so compared to other places in the country, the way we do our food ministry, again, will change. But again, the need for food has already, and before even the pandemic, has been an important need for the communities that we serve.
Dr. Butler, tell us more about the Feeding the 5,000. How's that working?
Great. So Feeding the 5,000 is, we are actually starting this. We're starting the second annual this December, on December the 11th. What we did was, obviously, because of the pandemic and because last year, December, people were still didn't have a job, still didn't have food on the table. What we wanted to do was lift some of the burden for families during the Christmas holiday. So the Feeding 5,000 event was something, obviously, Feeding 5,000 has some biblical semblance. And so, and we had no idea that we would be actually feeding 5,000. It was just something that we just, thought that was catchy. But we realized as we were planning for it, there was even more than 5,000 people that needed turkeys. And so we, again, pitched this idea to a funder who had already funded some previous work. And they actually bought the turkeys. They provided us with the resources. And that was about It was about $20,000 to purchase 5,000 turkeys at the time. And so what we did was we asked all of the Black-led community organizations to provide us with a list of the people that they support. And so in providing us the list, each organization had a number of turkeys that they would pick up. And so everyone obviously purchased a U-Haul to get the turkeys on the day of the event. In addition to that, we provided, as I explained earlier, trimmings bags, which had all of the things that you would need from fresh produce to seasonings in one box for people to be able to pick up. And this was organic food, so it wasn't a low quality produce, but we got the best of quality for people. In addition to that, we provided every single person with a $25 gift card because we know that there are some specific things that people like to cook, and we gave them an opportunity through our Safeway to provide each and every person with the gift card. So everybody came to this Cow Palace, which is a large facility in San Francisco, to pick up the turkeys, the produce. In addition to that, we provided books for kids, and also the firefighters provided bicycles for children. And so it was again a collaborative effort. All the communities came together and provided us this coalition of churches that actually led this effort to lead in the effort of in feeding 5,000 individuals. And as I explained, not only did we do that, but the week of Christmas, what we did was provided every single senior with a prepared meal. So our churches, 5 of our churches came together. We provided them with funds to cook a culturally relevant Christmas meal for our seniors, in which we delivered those meals to our seniors of the week of Christmas. And so obviously all of that cost a lot of money. But again, we had already established relationships. We've proven that we could work together. We have been doing this work, and the consistency in doing the work enabled us to feed 5,000. So next month, we'll be feeding 5,000 more because of what we're able to do. One thing that I did not mention is very important, and the reason why I wanted to show you this video, but is the power of telling your story. And I think one of the things that churches fail to do good is to tell a good story, especially when you're talking with philanthropists. And one of the ways you do that is just capturing images, capturing videos. And that is the reason why we were able to be successful. It's not because I had to write a 10-page proposal. It was just basically being able to tell a story to a philanthropist. And a lot of times when we find yourselves, doing these proposals and the work that is put into it, and then having to turn in reports, etc. This was a time in which we didn't have to do a lot of that. It was just basically a 5-minute conversation. The $1 million that was awarded to the coalition was based on a paragraph and 10 minutes of sharing a story. And that's God's favor, by the way, but it is also enabling you to, put the pieces together. And I can't emphasize the reason why we are successful as we are is because we began with working together. We began with working together, and we had already put in place this coalition prior to the pandemic. So when this opportunity came, we were not all the way, where we needed to be, but we were certainly in a space where we could accept the funds to move it forward, to push it forward. And so now when we are at City Hall talking to elected officials, when we are in the room, I actually just had a meeting with a philanthropist this morning that called us, not us going to them. It is because we're able to tell this story and keep this work consistent. So that's why I can't stress enough the power that you have in coming together as churches, particularly smaller churches and cities. When you come in together and you speak to a need and you speak up and speak out and speak often about that need, money will flow, because there is some power in the faith community coming together. We already have this history of providing for our communities, and a lot of times we're not able to do as much as we can because we didn't come together. And this is specific for San Francisco because, again, as I explained to you before, is that, our average income is $30,000. There's been an outmigration of Black people in San Francisco for the past 20 years. We make up 5% of the population. 20 years ago, it was 18% of the population. A lot of landmarks in San Francisco, particularly Black landmarks, they're almost gone. Okay. And that translates to the churches struggling, basically, especially during the pandemic. And so it was essential for us to come together to be able to sustain some of our churches, because with the money that we received, we were able to provide $5,000 a month for each church, to providing them a stipend to pay their members to actually do the delivery of the meals, and to keep, for some churches, that was just enough to keep their lights on so that they can be able to do ministry online. And so all of this is for the good of the people in which we serve, but it certainly saved the churches and is a consequence of them coming together. And so I just wanted to share that. And I will send the video. It just captures all of the work that we've been able to do. In addition, it is also about of providing support for our young people. And so we have even a youth network to continue to tell the story and carry this work even beyond our days, so that our young people were responsible and receive funding to ensure that other young people were vaccinated. So they created their own vaccination campaign, and they, as a consequence of that, were able to vaccinate 75 young people. And so all of that is a part of this coalition building work, and it's unique to every particular city, but it certainly will open doors when we all just really come together and get out of our isolation.
Good. Dr. Jonathan, how you doing?
Good.
Lathan Wood here, man, from the Charlotte area. Your testimony is very impactful and inspiring. I know we're a part of a couple of different initiatives that are on the west side of Charlotte that are doing similar things. My question to you, maybe slightly challenging, so if you need to take a breath and think about it, and I'm just leave you alone. Have you anyone on the coalition discussed anything or any strategies towards the concept of toxic charity? Toxic charity. Bob Lupton wrote a book in the early 2000s. You may be familiar with, in regards to toxic charity, where there's a partnership with individuals of lesser means, so that we don't take away from their dignity. And so I know one of the things that in our circles that we're kind of deliberating on is how to balance between providing help for a need, but also not enabling dysfunction. So what is your take on that concept there?
Yeah, so it's a great question, a great point. I think it depends, okay, in terms of context. That would not necessarily apply, in my opinion, to dealing with a pandemic, where there is this realness about households just not having food, or households just not having the resources because they've lost a job. So in terms of money, as one of my colleagues says, money is money, good or bad, especially when you're trying to meet a particular need. And at this point, at the end of the day, when you have to hear about a family of 7 in a household, you go to their household, in their refrigerator, the only thing they had is an eggplant. They need food. Doesn't matter how they get it. They don't care about anything else. They just need to put food on the table. And so there is it does, in my estimation, depend on the context in which you are in. But as a part of this process that we're in, also, it is this conscious raising. In our training and in our PhD training, we talk about consciousness, vision, and strategy, and providing. But you have to get people to a place to be able to understand the conditions in which they face, that it's systemic has nothing to do with them. Uh, it may have, it doesn't have to, it has nothing to do with them necessarily. But understanding, getting people to have some level of consciousness is a second step. The first step is actually getting them to a place where they can just breathe. And when you think about San Francisco and the reality that we are faced with already as Black people, people are not concerned about anything else but what I'm going to eat, how my kids are going to get fed today. And so once we see the need, provide the service, then we can talk about conscious reasoning. We can move from service to advocacy and telling them about, why are you in this position and why the system has created this for you. And why is it that, and what does it take? What is the vision? Where do we want to go? What does this look like for you in the future in terms of having a high quality life and then coming up with a strategy that gets us to that point? And so right now we're in the conscious, we are before the conscious stage in this coalition building. It's about just giving people the food that they need to get from day to day. And as we're going, and changing the model of how we do the ministry, especially beginning in the next year, we can then talk about why you are where you are and what the system has created for you to be there, and then help the people that we serve see where it could be, what it can be like, and the strategy to get there is where we're going. So I appreciate your question, but if I talk to a pastor or a parishioner about that question right now, they can't hear it because they're hungry. And I have to learn that myself, as I have sort of a mentor in this process that is a part of leadership in the Department of Health, but also on the ground. And a lot of times we try to educate people, but at the end of the day, they're just trying to get some food on the table. But we'll get to that point. I think it depends on the context. A lot of it has to do with a lot of patience and the right timing. But we are in the phases of thinking through. One of the things that I didn't mention a lot was the mental health, the mental illness, the challenges that we face. This past week, 2 of our young people committed suicide. This pandemic has really traumatized the community, has put us in a mental state that has everything to do with the system. And so before we can even raise consciousness, we have to just get people in the right mind frame to be able to receive it, then to create the strategy after we've launched the vision.
Thanks, man.
So curious to know, Lathan, you mentioned that in West Charlotte that you were doing some of this coalition work, and curious to know, like, what are some of the challenges and the successes of that work?
One of the challenges is just keeping, and I've been in and out of the circle, if that makes any sense. We're keeping the churches unified, because with any group, there's always got to be some kind of leader or some kind of alpha, and then their agenda dictates the culture, dictates the strategy. So I've seen successes. I've also seen these kind of things never kind of get off the ground when it comes down to a coalition. I've seen where the predominant church says the resources from comes to the coalition. And so that leaves some of the other churches that would love to partner kind of on the outside, to not kind of like want to stay in the fight, because if one dog eats all of the meat, then the rest of us go hungry. So that's kind of just some of the challenges I've seen with this strategy. Before I moved to Charlotte, I was actually living in Atlanta, and I was actually social services director for Atlanta Housing Authority. And if you know anything about Atlanta Housing Authority, they were one of the pioneers in removing concentrated pockets of poverty So they were breaking down a lot of the hood, as we say over there in the South. I don't know what y'all say in San Francisco. And so we were involved with several projects that deal with mixed income housing, which kind of helped to eradicate, you're still providing services for those who are in need, but also put them in environments where they're inspired to actually want to change change their lifestyle. It becomes a repetitive kind of cyclical thing where you got the same people coming for the same handouts every month. And you're right, they are hungry, but there's also a kind of need. So I've seen challenges on all sides. One where there's programs that impact more than just one church and impact our whole community. I've also seen it where there's been a coalition of churches and a coalition of people, but only one kind of really gets a full benefit. So I've seen all sides. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, hands-on. So that's kind of been my context.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And certainly something that, we're experiencing even now. I think a part of the way in which we've gotten around it is to create, what some would call it bylaws. But if you're not a nonprofit per se, like an articles of collaboration, laying out the specific roles of each church and what it takes to be a coalition member. And one of the things that we also do, and as a director, I have to make sure I ensure is that we're trying to enhance the already existing programs in our churches. So, for example, my church has a tutoring program. Our area is education. Another church is focused on mental health. So we put money and resources behind that, and then we corral all those churches to that. But it is a challenge because, for my church, Third Baptist, is considered, one of the largest churches. We get the resources, and so many churches, whether or not they say it or not, may have some slight against that, right? And so, but what's important is how to. So that's where the funding comes in. So the $1 million allowed us to enhance the program at my church, but there's a second site that will be implemented. But one of the churches will actually be that particular site, which is kind of, it helps in that. But again, I hear you that there is this. There's only a number of pastors or a number of churches that sort of carry the load. And that's why we have to rethink even our model, because we do have some of the churches that may not have as many congregants, a part of the congregation, not even able to do the type of work because they just don't have the manpower or the woman power to do that. And so, that's a real thing. But I do think that it is important to have, we set up a organizational structure to where we do have a steering committee, which consists of not only our pastors, but some of their parishioners that actually do the work on the ground. We have outside persons, for example, those that are in our Department of Public Health that sit on that steering committee to sort of help to navigate some things like this. We've set up a finance team to manage the funds, to make sure it's equitably distributed throughout the different churches. We have our operations director, typically a typical, organizational structure. We have team captains, 5 team captains that are responsible for 4 to 5 churches. And so they sort of, deal with those particular churches. So we've set up some structure to enable all churches to be involved. But at the end of the day, I think what has worked for us in that regard is that no matter which church in the organization, all of them have benefited from the resources that they received during the pandemic. It either kept their lights on, it either allowed them to pay some of their members that did not have jobs, and at the same time, it put food on the table. So I think everybody understood the assignment, everybody understood the goal, and if you just help people to help to see that, then I think it works. And then the other thing I would say about that is that prior to the pandemic, nobody had any money. We're able to pay per each liaison also $1,000 a month. Churches get up to $5,000 a month. Prior to that, we were doing the work just because we were doing the work. And I think once you get the money, obviously, you find out the churches that are in it to do the work, and you find out the churches that just are focused on the money. And fortunately, all of our churches were doing the work prior to even having the money, so it was easy for us in our mission. Okay, I think that is it. I will send just the presentation as I'm not able to share, but I think it sort of captures all of the work that we have been able to do, and I'm happy to answer any questions at any point. And I know that Dr. Thompson and the team can send my information. First of all, I'd like again to thank Just Lead organization for giving me opportunity to share some of the work that we've been able to do here in San Francisco. And it can be different in other cities, but this is certainly what I do think that is important is the power of collaboration and coalition building. And then thank you all for your attention and sharing as well. And much appreciated.